neighborhood in southeast Portland on a pretty busy thoroughfare here with pizza parlors and furniture shops and auto repair and a card room. And I'm going to turn here along a residential street, kind of narrow, a home from maybe the 30s and an apartment house, a little more recent. A couple of houses from early 20th century, and just beyond that purple house, wonderful sunflowers shining at us along the street and a garden behind. Let's stop and take a look and see what we can find back there.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. A lot of folks are dreaming about living in community, but it's not going to be possible for us to have people move to new places and build new communities. We just don't have enough land and space and materials for that. So we're going to be thinking about building community right where we are, right in place. I'm in a wonderful place in Portland, in suburban Portland, and it's a community in place. So my guests are members of the households that live here together, and I'm going to start with Naga to tell us, what are we seeing here? What has happened?
Sure. So we're right in the middle of a three-house community space, and we're in the central courtyard. And so there are three large houses around us, and then a small cottage here. And altogether, there's about a dozen people that live in these houses, and we share all the land together.
And how did that start? I mean, what would we have seen originally?
Sure. So 7 or 8 years ago, these two properties were divided. You had two city lots with a fence down the middle, and this house didn't actually exist yet behind me. And after this house was purchased here, a couple years later, the other house was purchased, the fences were taken down in between, and then a couple years after that, this house was built behind.
Now I could imagine people having taken the fence down and having two households and sharing, as you do, a garden perhaps. You've gone further than that. You know, there's something more open and more communal about what you're doing. Can somebody talk about how you live in this space?
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice living here. I mean, we have meals together all the time, and that to me is very important because I like food, but also because it's a great chance to connect with everyone, like kind of on a primal level, you know, like you gather and eat. You just end up liking those people more, and I just think it's important to share meals and share like big decisions about the space.
Do you get together and meet? I mean, how did it get going? I mean, maybe the first question to ask is even finding one another, people that felt compatible to want to have a more shared life.
You know, I think that's a pretty organic process. There's been lots of people here before I was here, and there's people here now who are maybe moving on, but you know, there's certain people and it sticks and it feels really good. I don't know, anybody?
There was no one set decision that was made to this is how we're going to do things a certain way. Just over time, different people moved in to the houses and it sort of evolved from there.
But there must have been a seed thought about having this be a more communal way of living than separate houses. Is that
absolutely
true?
Though the interesting thing about it is there was no sort of grand vision for this kind of community. It did happen very organically, as Matt said. You're right that there was an initial vision in that three people purchased this house together, the original house, and moved in, but they had no intention of buying the house next door. And they only did so because it was empty for a while. It had been a rental. They tracked down the owner and asked if they could buy it. And once they did, they realized what they'd like to do is have friends move in and take the fences down.
Okay.
So it was this very kind of organic process, the same with the third house being built in the back. You know, that wasn't the vision originally, but it came about.
So you've got something growing organically, and still is. It seems to me evolving.
Yeah.
I suspect a lot of this came from just maybe, I don't know if I want to call it the philosophy or just the lifestyle of one of the key people, Lydia, who started creating this. I think it's just that she really empowered all the people around her to take charge and to, feel, there's owners and there's renters, and, in a world of legality, those are different things, but I think she was just a really open person and really just always tells, kind of people who are thinking about the community as a whole, kind of right on, go for it and do it. And I suspect that like a lot of that energy amongst her and the other two people who like first created this really just set those seeds in place that other people could come in and feel empowered and, make change here for the positive.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to speak a little bit also to the organicness of the process. With our meals, for instance, it was probably just about a year and a half ago when someone that was living here, who is no longer here, at a meeting said, hey, I think it would be really nice if we shared some meals together between the two houses. I would like to cook this day of the week. Does anybody else want to cook another day of the week? And it started with one night a week at the Gray House and one night a week at the Purple House, and has since evolved to having dinner 5 nights a week, quite often kind of spontaneously also on Saturdays or Sundays. Somebody will make a lunch or a dinner, but it's been a really organic process. It went from 2 nights a week to 4 nights a week, back down to maybe 2 or 3 nights a week, and now up again. So it really is based on who's here at the moment and how much time we have and how inspired we are to share things like meals and resources.
Thank you. I wondered how that came to be. Now you mentioned meetings, because I gotta imagine with this complex, you've got some very sophisticated stuff. You've got chickens and gardens and orchards and a bike shed and things to be built, and I see projects everywhere, the son of it, and part of the reality of being on the land is not only are there projects everywhere, there are unfinished projects everywhere, and materials, right? It's very alive here that way. Surely there must be some discussion of, I want, somebody saying, I want to do such and such. Anybody else interested? Can I do it? Where can I? How do you make your decisions? Do you meet in some regular way?
That's a good question. Again, it's fairly organic. We have a pretty minimal structure. We do have a meeting between all 3 houses once a month is all. It's for terms of discussing kind of logistical issues like that. We have scheduled work parties every other Sunday, or second and fourth Sundays of the month, where we all kind of get out and do the various projects together and get a lot of work done. But it's all pretty informal. We don't have sort of a formal consensus process. I think it seems like we all kind of like that, or at least I do. I like the fact that we can kind of sit down and just talk about what's going on, talk about issues and resolve them amongst each other without a lot of sort of formal structure in place.
And go ahead.
We also have a email listserv group that we use to communicate with one another, to kind of float ideas when somebody has a project and maybe the next community meeting is not going to be for 3 weeks, and write it out there. Everybody gets to read it, and we can either respond online there, or quite often we'll have discussions with one another throughout the month about whatever issues are on the table for the community.
We tend to see each other a lot because we share so many meals and whatnot, and it's never really expected that you come to dinner or anything like that. It's more just somebody cooks food, it's available, and with 10 or 11 of us living here, it seems like you always have maybe 6 or 7 people on any given night at dinner. And so we spend a lot of time just sort of hanging out, and that's, I think, when a lot of ideas get floated or stuff gets talked about.
It seemed to me just sort of in the course of life itself, you just, it's organic that way. You mentioned projects, and one of my questions is whether or not you sort of have people that head up particular projects, whether...
How that's been kind of working, it seems, is that people who are excited about a certain project, who are interested or may have a background and skill level on a certain project, or who just wants to learn more about it by doing it, will kind of say, hey, I want to do this, and then maybe pick a couple of people who also seem to be excited about it. So I think it runs towards what we're excited about, rather than something that's like we got to do this. It's like someone who wants to take it on because they're interested in doing it and being excited about it. So, yeah.
And sort of corral other people. Other people want to join me in on this, and you pitch in and help. Kind of an approach. Is that how
I think
it
so.
works?
Yeah. I mean, like I have experience working in gardens and experience with tree crops and things, and I really like planting gardens and planting trees, and so I do a lot of the organizing and like planning for those sorts of things. But I'm certainly not the only person who works on it. Anyone who's interested like comes and works on it. Lisa works a lot. And Naga has experience with chickens, so he is like naturally gravitating towards chickens.
Seems that you all, though, that there's an underlying ethic here of trying to live closer to the land, growing your own, raising your chickens. I would imagine using as few resources as possible, or salvaging. I mean, those kinds of approaches. Has there been talk about putting solar up here or on your roofs? It may not be practical in Portland with this great. Are there other infrastructural things? I mean, is that
Matt?
I suspect we're all here from our, like our desire to live, like you say, closer to the land and to just sort of reduce our impact. And, when you look around this whole place, I don't always get that, right? I'm in a city, and I'm like, half a block from a really major road. You can kind of hear in the background, but you just forget about it when you're looking at all of this. And so, definitely there's lots of reasons why people came here. There's lots of things we're doing. We're trying to work on many different projects, from rainwater harvesting. The new house does have solar hot water on the west side. Solar is actually a better resource here in Portland than most people think. It's as good or better than like Germany, which has a fair amount of sun as well. People often say, comparing it to Europe. We're trying to figure out how we might deal with gray water from 3 households. This house alone, and I've just looked at one of my water bills recently, and this house alone is using, with 2 of us, like 1,500 gallons of water a month. It's like, obviously what are ways we can reduce all of that, but then in the end, how could we, take that and, use it to our advantage versus, the default for the new house, luckily, is to actually put it in a dry well. It's right here underneath, but how can we also use it elsewhere on the land and take the gray water from it?
water your trees, water your
Sorry.
Sure, but I think one of the things that's most interesting about this space is, if you can imagine, when this place was purchased about 8 years ago, it was a flat gravel lot.
Serious?
There was nothing growing here.
This lot behind
There was nothing growing
This
here.
one back here,
Yeah.
right?
If you
Not
could-
where the older trees. Those were
The holly tree was here. These old cherry trees here. Otherwise, there was really nothing
Whoa.
growing here. And so
bare ground.
that to me is the most amazing thing that's been done here. We have some green technologies, and we hope to add more. But I think the most amazing thing is the fact that this has been put into garden, and really it's in kind of a constant state of improvement. We're in a whole process right now as a community of redesigning this space around more sort of a permaculture, food forest principles. And partly we're doing that just because the house behind me just finished being built, and so for the first time we have 3 houses in sort of relationship with one another. And we realize, oh wow, that means we need to redo the paths and recreate the space to reflect that relationship, and continue to sort of build up the soil and the plant life here.
I want to ask about, what do you find are the challenges of living here? I'm thinking about things like, how do you resolve conflicts? How do you find new people to live here? I mean, do you have a
Oh, we hijacked them.
Oh, you do? Oh!
We kidnapped them.
Can I?
It's simple.
I mean, go ahead.
I think one of the challenges in any community is as it gets larger, there's always a sense of, how do you do decision making that doesn't take, or you just acknowledge that decision making takes longer. So how do you work with your community to really make enough people weigh in on the super important decisions, and kind of let the less important decisions be made by smaller, whether they're informal or formal subcommittees and such things. So, but as long as there's a sense of everybody moving forward like together, and that there's progress, maybe that's one of the things we buy into in being here together, right? We gain a lot of our time back by participating together, eating together, and then we put more of that energy into the community.
And I think it's one of the really interesting features of this community is that it's not formed around some particular religious ethos or even political ideology or whatnot. I've been part of an intentional community that was formed around something like that, and I found it to be a very different experience. Part of what I like here is that this is really just people, wanting to live in closer connection with one another, wanting to live closer to the land, and just doing so as people with nothing really sort of connecting us besides our common desire to live that way. And it's interesting because I find that that creates actually a much more sort of organic way, I think, of working through conflicts and whatnot, because we all just approach them as people. We don't approach them as members of an organization or, trying to fulfill some mission together.
Yeah, we don't have to default to any structure as like, well, as this, we do this.
And I think it actually really allows our humanity to be more fully present in our communication with one another. We're more sort of autonomous, I think, as individuals in this community than perhaps in some.
And yet, ironically, able to share better and more fully and more richly.
Do you feel like
Monocultures just don't work.
Monocultures just don't work?
Yeah.
Said by our garden man. He knows that for sure. Yeah, there is no one right way to live.
Yeah.
Yeah? No one right way for a group to organize itself. Any last thoughts? Some little gem that we didn't cover that you want to add?
I do want to say just that what's interesting about this scenario is that it looks pretty cool and impressive, but I think it's actually if other folks are thinking, well, how could I be a part of something like that? How could I do that? I own a home. I have fences between me and my neighbors. How could I ever get from where I am to something like this? It seems to me that it's actually not that difficult. You take the fences down, you put the yards into gardens, you develop some agreements with your neighbors to share meals, and it can develop very organically that all of a sudden, instead of a very sort of isolated urban mode of existence that we're so used to, you have a much richer shared experience of living with people. And it's, there are challenges and tricks along the way, but no greater than the challenges of living our current urban existence.
I agree. I think ultimately it comes down to meeting your neighbors and then starting to offer the idea of share, and then I think people can start to get it again. People realize there's a lot of problems, and that being isolated doesn't make them self-sufficient, at least in terms of where we're headed in the future. So.
Right. And one last thing I would say is that there are tangibles and intangible benefits to that. The tangible benefits are, I think it's cheaper. We share a vehicle among several of us. We share food, which winds up being quite a bit cheaper. We're actually working on our bulk food buying practices and sharing. We share a lot of resources, and so it's less expensive. And then, of course, there's lessening our impact. The intangible benefit is just the much greater sense of sort of belonging, in community. I can look out my window and just about any given moment there's somebody out in the yard doing something, and I can walk out and talk to them, and there's just this exchange that normally doesn't happen living in the city.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us into your circle. I think it's, feels like a wonderful, enlivening place, a wonderful experiment in what you are doing. I think that a lot of folks are going to get inspired, and I hope a lot of fences go down because of what you're doing. And I would love to have our viewers get a chance to just get a little flavor for a little bit of a tour. So could some of you sort of show us the chickens and the houses, and at least from the outside? Can we do that? Naga, give me a sense of the layout of your place here.
Sure. Okay. So what you can see behind us here is the original gray house that was purchased 7 or 8 years ago. The purple house next to us that was bought a couple years after that, and right down the middle of the gardens here was where the fence was. Okay. That was the fence line.
Okay.
If we walk through the garden here on this path, right where we're walking, believe it or not, just a few months ago was a concrete driveway running all the way back to a garage, which was where the chickens are now, back there.
We'll see that. What'd you do with all this concrete?
Oh, okay. Well, we used it, broke it up into urbanite with a jackhammer, and used it to build a garden retaining wall in front of the gray house.
Hi, Matt. Okay,
Hi.
what's happening in the garden space?
Well, this main area in between the two houses is our annual vegetable garden beds. But a lot of the other areas in the yard, these areas up against the house, and these sort of large areas that are open, are being designed right now by us to incorporate a number of perennial plants like fruit trees, grapevines, smaller perennial vegetables. And
So are these guys going to get, these are what?
these are trees and they will be planted.
Okay, nice. Fruit trees.
Yes.
Yeah?
And
All right.
of course, it would cost a whole bunch of money to plant this all up, this amount of space, buying all the plants from a nursery. So in the winter time, I took cuttings of a number of different things. So here we have grapes and josta berries, black currants, white currants, gooseberries, a number of different things.
So when will you'll be planting those in?
We're gonna start planting in the fall
I
and
see.
continue designing over the winter and plant much of it up in the spring.
Okay, okay. So you got a handful. 'Cause
We
there's
got a lot
of
to work
nice space
on.
Here.
Yeah, many things to care for already.
Back to you.
Thank you.
Nova!
That's nice.
Pretty. Thank you. You look like a sunflower yourself.
Here, you could take this to
You wanna
Jessie
take
too.
that? Take it to Matt.
Can you take it to? Oh yeah,
Take
you
it
can
to
take
Matt.
it to Matt.
Take it to Matt. Would you?
Gonna
Bring it to Matt. Bring it to Matt.
Can I bring you a sunflower?
Yes.
Oh, that's pretty.
So Matt, this house, tell me a little bit about it, because that's pretty new, right?
It's a collaboration between Lydia and I. She's the builder. It looks very conventional outside, as it was built as an accessory dwelling unit in Portland, which allows you to build a second home behind another home with a few restrictions. And it's got straw bales in the walls inside, so it's a straw bale home and a lot of natural finishes and as much reuse as we could, sort of do inside. It's got a footprint of about 500 square feet.
500 on the
On the
ground
ground,
floor.
so 500 footprint. So the area that it takes up is about 500 square
I
feet.
see.
The actual livable space inside with 2 stories is 800 square feet, and it has technically 3 bedrooms and a bathroom in there. So a fair amount of actual cozy living spaces in a very small overall footprint.
So I see you got metal roof.
And this one's going to be a living roof right here. It's not. There's no soil in it, but right up here, and eventually it'll drip water down into this into the barrel and stuff here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be planted.
I think you said this was required in new homes. Is that right?
We have to take the rainwater from the roof in all new homes in Portland, and we have to put it into the ground. We can't put it into the sewer system.
That's fabulous.
So we can do it through a number of ways. So we're filling up the water barrel, and then the overflow goes into a dry well, which is over under the fire pit.
A dry well.
Dry well.
Okay, okay. Well, chickens. Naga, tell us about.
Sure.
What was here?
So we have well, right what you're looking at right now is the garage that I mentioned. This was here just a few months ago, and we removed it to make some space here. Broke up the concrete pad that it was sitting on, and actually created the porch out of the concrete pad.
I see.
That's what that porch is made from.
Okay.
This hole right here, this was concrete driveway. We're going to be planting a service berry tree in here today. We have a little tree house up in the top of our holly tree.
Fun. Lisa Ann, what was this like?
7 years ago, this was a packed gravel parking lot. There was a driveway that came up from the bike rack, up around the house here, and this little cottage, all of these garden beds, the fig trees, none of this was here. It was all gravel parking lot.
This is kind of a fun building.
Yeah, this is a little studio. Lydia built this back around the time that she got the gray house. It's built of light straw clay, which is a natural building material, is how it's insulated. Natural plaster walls, and there's a living roof up there.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of volunteer plants up there. I know that there are some irises that she planted up there, some tiger lilies, maybe a daylily, but we've seen a lot of like mosses and some sedums land up there. This year there were some St. John's wort and a little sunflower, I think, was up there at one point.
So you got a volunteer roof and a whole lot of things happening here in your garden.
Oh, yeah.
This part. I want to see over here along the side. You've got the bike racks.
Sure, yeah. If we walk around this way, behind us you can see our rainwater collection barrels.
Right.
And so yes, this was all gravel driveway a few years ago, and now it's path, and we'll be planting a lot more stuff in here as well. And Megan can tell you about what's going on here.
Tell us, what do we have here?
So this is our temporary bike stable.
A bike stable, I like that.
Yeah, and as you can see, it's, it doesn't quite get the length that we're going for yet.
Right.
But we're hoping to build a more permanent structure within the next year. Because we don't have, this is how most people transport themselves and goods around town.
Okay, it looks like a good gaggle of bikes here.
Yeah, between us we share one car that some of us use.
Wow, that's pretty impressive for what, 10, 12 people to have one car. That's the right direction. And so you've got a child seat, and do you have like trailers or anything to haul cargo?
We do. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
We have two different trailers. We have a large capacity trailer that we can put something like 600 pounds on from a company called Bikes at Work, and then we have a smaller trailer that's enclosed with a rainproof plastic tub from a company in Eugene called Bike Friday.
Yes.
We can haul about 150 pounds with, and
all right.
people use them for all kinds of stuff. We get straw bales for our chickens with those, and chicken feed.
With the bikes?
Oh yes, with the bikes.
Oh, I love it.
I love
Oh, that is. This must be Portland. We use bikes. This must be Portland. All right. This has been a fabulous whirlwind tour, and it will be fun to visit you guys in about 2 years, 3 years, with more things planted and other things refined. Thank you for your experiment for all of us. What you're doing. You're watching Peak Moment, locally reliant living for challenging times. You can't get it more local than this, creating community right in place. I'm Janaea Donaldson. Join us next time.